Alright, well, what we're working on here today is a 92 Dodge D350. I'm going to pull the vacuum pump, power steering pump, and all that junk apart. And I got this kit from DCP, Diesel Care Parts. That's their website address there. And that's what the kit looks like. I don't know if this is a double lip seal or not. This is just the one that the guy wanted me to do the work. You know, he provided this kit. Sometimes when there's a the end of the power steering pump is messed up, you'll need that double lip seal. But I'll find out that in a minute. What I've done here is I've loosened up all the bolts. I've taken out all the bolts that I could, except for this one. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to float this power steering pump over so I don't have to disconnect it. I'm just going to push it back and lay it here on the top of the frame rail. I removed the intake charge pipe. I think that's it over there. Yeah, that's it over there. And I put some paper in the hole. I recommend to put some paper in that hole. You don't want anything to fly in there or any of your tools to fall in there. So anyway, I disconnected the oil line from the block there. I disconnected it there. That was the easiest place to disconnect it. There is another one that's connected to the bottom of the pump there that we'll have a look at here in just a minute. Alright, so this is the bottom of the pump. It's backlit a little bit, sorry about that. Now on this bolt right here, that little bolt sticking out, there's supposed to be a bracket. And that bracket is supposed to go up to the corner right here on the power steering pump, and that bracket's gone. And that may be one of the reasons why it's leaking, because the support for the pump is not there. But I'm going to put a kit in it. I'm going to have to make a new bracket because that bracket is not available. And when you pull this vacuum pump, power steering pump assembly off, there's a gear on the end of it that mates with the injection pump gear. There's no timing or alignment involved with that for taking it out and putting it back in. So that's a pretty good look at it. The reason why I take all the bolts loose before I take these bolts out is because there's nothing really to support this. I took them all out with open end and boxed in wrenches and really can't get sockets in there on the power steering pump. There's just not enough space in there for you to get a socket or any kind of power tool. So I just did it manually. I didn't want to break the power steering pump loose and drain oil everywhere. So let's I'll get this thing tore down and get it out, and we'll have a look at it again. Alright, well, we're just working on this pump here, trying to get that stuff out of the way, trying to slide that pump back. It's not going to cooperate. It's probably got junk in the way. Gonna have to pull it off from the front, the whole assembly off, and then tilt it at an angle. I think the motor mount might be in the way a little bit. Alright, so I'm going to try to set this camera in a place where I can see, keep things rolling here if possible. All the lines loose. Alright, there we go. Turn this thing up in the air like this. Alright, so here's the gasket. I've got a new gasket, so that's not a big deal. Get this pump off the end of this thing without dropping it on the ground, right? And I've got a catch pan under there to catch any dripping. But yep, this is what it all looks like. The oil line just kind of floating around down there, getting caught on stuff. But it's a pretty simple deal. That's what it looks like. Hey, sorry about that. I got stuck on the phone. Yeah, I'm working on it. Anyway, so that's what it all looks like. take it apart. Gear just runs off of the other gears. The end of that power steering pump. I think there's a place on there where it could get a groove. And I can't feel it with my finger, even though it's shiny. I can't even feel it with my finger, so it should be fine. It's fine. Alright, I got this part all cleaned up. There's the seal. There's the front of the gear. Got it cleaned up and looking pretty good. Let's get it tore down and have a good look at things on the inside. Alright, so this little guy comes off like that, and you can see the seal on the inside. Okay, you can see that seal in there. To replace that, we're going to replace this O-ring. This is one of the places where this particular pump leaked from. And then when you look in here, you can see the little dog assembly that lines up with the power steering pump. Now it's supposed to have a little stamp on there. And I don't see the little stamp, so let's flip it around. Alright, so this one doesn't have a stamp. Usually they'll have a little divot on there that shows which way it's supposed to be installed. This one does not have one, so maybe it's been rebuilt before and this is a new little alignment dowel. I'm not sure. But I can tell which way it goes by the marks that are on it. This side was facing that way because this little doodad in the middle spins and there's a part around it that's stationary, so it looks like that's kind of where it was wobbling at a little bit. Weeble wobble, and gives it a little indicator mark, so that's all we need, right? Alright, so I got these 3 bolts loose here. You'll have to use a thin wall socket on this one. As you can look at the height of each bolt, okay, that's how that helps you keep track of which bolt goes nowhere. Now this one, obviously, it's going to be a little bit longer. This one, let's see, let's have a look. The other 2 are the same length, only one of them is a little longer. So it's self-explanatory and obvious. That's no problem. What does this thing do here? We'll have to get this guy apart. I need 2 hands. Alright, so I got this seal drove out. I just drove it out from this side. It goes in like this. Okay, it goes in like that. And the best way that I could figure to get it out was to use a punch like this and to slowly work around. And once you get it moving, it's done. It's easy. This other seal here, as you can see, it busted when I was taking it out. That was where it was leaking. I think they all leak here, but this seal is real brittle and it's falling apart, so you know it's a good idea. Make sure and replace all the seals while you're doing this. Alright, so what I found was, to fit in here, because this is kind of a funny size, is I found a valve. Just a regular small block Chevy valve here. Something that fits in that hole nicely. I think it'll take it almost all the way. Yeah, it's not going to go all the way. It gets stuck in there, so it needs just a tiny bit more. I don't know. You can see the edge of that right there. It needs a little bit more. So I'll grind this valve down a little bit. This is just an old junky old valve. I'll grind it down and be back in just a second. Alright, so I ground that valve down a little bit. I'm going to try to get this little guy drove in a little better. Oh yeah, it's going in there nicely. Just want to check, make sure we're square, everybody's happy. Not a problem. All that seal does is go up against the edge there. Just want to make sure it's straight, no problem. So I measured this and it came out to be about 30 millimeters, something in that range. Yeah, there we go. 37.31 millimeters. Yep. 37.31 millimeters for that size of the outside diameter of this valve. And that fits for driving that seal home right there. Cool. Alright, so got the new O-ring here. I'm going to put some lube on it. I use the transmission lube. I think it's called Goo Gone or something like that. I'm kind of picky about my O-rings, so I want them to be perfect, and I don't like putting grease in there, so just kind of have to stretch it out a little bit, get it on there. Goes on there real easy. Just a little stretch in there. But that's it. That's all there is to it. This part is done. This other part here, I need to pull it apart. This has the little vane assembly in it. You just kind of give it a couple of taps and it comes off pretty easy. This inside is on a bushing. It's on a bushing and it floats on that bushing in there. So there's nothing wrong with that. That's in good shape. That's not part of the rebuild. Get that cleaned out and have a look. Everybody can have a good look at that. That's not part of the rebuild. That doesn't come with the kit. As you can see, what we have inside here is just like a variable vane type assembly. When this thing spins, the vane's going in and out. It's kind of the same setup that's on like the automatic transmissions. The automatic transmissions have a variable vane pump in them, and the little turbo bullet heaters, those have a vane in there like that. It's like some kind of funny carbon looking vane, and it breaks real easy. So I don't know how tight these are, but I'm not going to mess with them. I'm just going after this seal. See, you just want to pop the seal out. We got a brand new seal for it. I'm going to wipe this down here, get some of that extra oil and stuff off it here, and get it cleaned up a little better. You know, hey, why not, right? Okay. Get the new seal, put some junk on it, some juice, grease it up real nice and pretty. And let me have a look at this land where the seal goes in. Looks like there's some debris in it. I'm going to clean that out, because just the smallest little freckle of crap in there will cause problems. We don't want problems. So let's get this thing cleaned out real nice. I'm doing this with my pick, but I'm going to warn you in advance. Don't go running around in there and going nuts and scratching things, because you're going to cause yourself some problems by scoring the inside of that O-ring groove. If you get in there too hard with that pick, it'll leave a trail in it. It's a perfect little place for some oil to leak out through, so we don't want to do that. So just be careful with all this type of stuff. It's aluminum. There's no way to fix any of this stuff if it gets a groove in it. You could go to a larger size O-ring, but you know, you get into a tricky territory when you start doing stuff like that. So I'm not going to mess with that. I'm going to do it right the first time, and there we go. You get a little bit of cleaner here. Alright, so I just put a little bit of brake clean on this towel, because the stuff that was in there was not coming out like I'd like it to. It's resisting getting cleaned. There we go. Alright, there we go. That's looking pretty good. Let's get our new O-ring in there. I got it juiced up pretty good. Juice it up some more. Hey, it's nothing wrong with extra juice on there. It's not going to hurt anything. This tiny little O-ring here doesn't really show a whole lot when it's in all the way, so not much we can do about that. It doesn't show a lot of thickness. That's all right. But yes, sir. So this thing, it has an alignment dial here. All right, and that's kind of the easiest way to figure out how this thing goes back together. But it's simple. There's not much complication going on here at all, folks. Okay, this is easy peasy, man. So that goes that way. Get the bolts, start the bolts in there. And just lift it up a little bit to get that vein out of, so it doesn't mess around with anything. Make sure we don't have any interference with anything. There we go. Simple. It's ABC, baby. Tighten these up lightly. You don't want to go nuts on them and get something going crooked. Alright, there we go. Give it a little bump. There we go. Success. Alright, so next step, get this little guy on there. The O-ring that we have here, this is the one that's stretched out really tight. Okay, that's what goes there. Then you want to get some juice and juice this guy up a little bit. Motor oil is fine. I'm spoiled. I like my trans gel. This stuff will wash out. It'll be fine. It won't clog up the filter. That's the main idea. So that goes together like that. We put a couple bolts on them. I'm going to tighten up these bolts that are here after I install it, so I don't have to worry about holding everything. And it's just a much easier way of doing it like that. Alright, well, I didn't put this little doodad in there. If your little alignment dog has a stamp mark on there, the stamp mark goes towards the outside. This one doesn't have it, and that's fine with me. I don't care. I remember how it came out. It had some little markings on it that were pretty obvious. That thing ought to be fine. And the way this little guy here goes together, that O-ring is pretty tight. That O-ring is pretty tight in there. So I'm gonna have to get the nut started on this and get it going back together to get that O-ring to go in, because it is very tight. I don't know why they put an oversized O-ring in that spot, but if you go beating it on there, it's gonna shave off the edge of it and it might leak. So we just have to be careful about how we do that. Alright, well, I got this thing flipped over and I got a couple of the nuts started here. And just remember, when you put it back together, the window, the open side that's larger, faces up. So we'll go with that. But yeah, I'm just going to slowly bring these two nuts in a little bit at a time here. See if we can get that O-ring to smash in. That's the only option here. That O-ring that came out was so brittle and hard, it just fell apart. We don't have a choice with this O-ring. They've oversized it a little bit, and that's fine. I don't like doing it like this. I'd rather push it together. And I just don't have a way of pushing it together. Just need to make sure that it's going evenly. Nice to give it a little tap here and there just to make sure everybody's cooperating. There we go. Tell you what, that thing is going to be tight all the way. I'm not going to like that at all. Sucker better not leak. That's That's all I got to say. Dang. Alright, well, that's about it. How much we can do about it. That's the seal that they gave us with the kit. And I'll torque that down after I bolt it to the engine. These other ones, I torqued those down with the impact drivers, so they're done. That's it. I lubed this little seal in here. I lubed that a little bit with that trans gel, and that'll take care of the job till that diesel oil gets in there. And really, right now, it's ready to go back on. Not really much else to do to it. This is a pretty simple kit. Pretty simple job. Just make sure you get this face of this thing cleaned up here. No little doodads sitting there causing problems and making it leak. That wouldn't be fun. There we go. We're in good shape. Alright, so we got this pump all cleaned up. I just got some green Scotch-Brite and went over the end of that and cleaned it up. It looks really good. Then I just cleaned it off with some brake clean and a towel, preferably a lint-free towel. You don't want to get a bunch of specks of lint or anything in there. That's something that you always want to protect on something like that. That stuff won't have a place to go if it gets stuck in there. I'm about to set this thing down in there and try to get these wires out of the way. About to set this thing down in there. Got some sunlight getting in on us, so we might have some difficulty with the light, but basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to set this vacuum pump down in there and line it up with the power steering pump. And the vacuum pump, I've got the gasket set on there, and I probably could have waited for that, but I put a little bit of trans gel on it to retain the gasket. And the gasket's kind of tweaked a little bit, so it's trying to go wonky on me. But just kind of have a look inside and try to match that up the best you can. These hoses on here, might have been a bad idea to leave this thing like this, I don't know. Looks like it's going alright though. Just kind of have to do it a little bit at a time. There we go. And you can turn the gear a little bit. I think you could see that part where my hand is. Yeah, there's one of my fingers. I'm turning that gear a little bit to line that up. So I currently have it lined up and it's in position. I'm going to get one of these nuts started on it. And it's a pretty good lean over here. This truck is a little bit higher off the ground, so I just put new springs on it and rebuilt the front end and ball joints, so it's pretty high up. There we go. Got one started there. One of them came out with the studs, so we'll get him in there. It's much easier to do this right now. Can't really tighten them up, but that's okay. But this one here in this corner by the engine block is the hardest one. You'll sit there with two fingers turning it just a tiny bit at a time all day till you get it going far enough. Bottom will be fine. Mostly it's in the right spot and it's fine. Alright, so let me wipe my hand off. Get this pump lined up There's no alignment at all required for the gears, and I cleaned the face of this up pretty good. I think you can see it now because this giant pump's in the way, blocking the whole situation. But yeah, I cleaned the face of that up pretty good. We'll see if we can get this little guy to cooperate. Get the line down here, the pressure line, because it's going to want to be spring loaded and ding around everywhere. I'll just leave it be for now. I just don't want to drop that gasket. Okay. We don't have studs or anything to go in with on this, so you just kind of have to get it the best you can. Get that out of the way. That'll constantly have a problem back there. Yeah, it looks like it's getting into the motor mount a little bit. There we go. Those power steering lines are kind of getting a little tricky there. So let's get our gasket back in the right place. And then we just need to place this little guy in there. Alright, so I figured out what was blocking me. I got up on the bottom side of the pump and looked up from the bottom, and there's a wire right here that plugs into a small sensor that goes here on the side. So I got that out of the way. I couldn't see it from the top. These other wires were blocking my view, but now that you move it all the way, you can see it. It's right at the end of the power steering pump. So I just unplug this plug off of it, and that'll give you enough space to get by. It's easier to push it up in there from the bottom. Just the mirror, just the weight of that whole thing is just holding it. But as soon as you get it in the right spot, it goes in just as slick as butter. It's easy. It just slides right in. It lines up with the teeth on the gears in there, and it just slides right in. So this is about it. I mean, I'm going to tighten it all up. This will get you a good idea about getting this thing back in there. So I hope this helps somebody. Here's our surprise for today. These two bushings go on the back of that power steering pump. Now, when I was taking this thing off, one of them fell into the oil pan, and I thought it was a magnet. And I thought there was a magnet stuck on the back of this power steering pump that fell off, but it was that spacer. So those two spacers go right there on these back two bolts. The top bolt, I backed it out so I could get it in there. The bottom spacer was stuck to it, and it never fell off till I started trying to put it all together. So, word of warning, put those spacers on before you get all this done. Or you can do it the hard way like me. That's normally how it goes. Put it on after you put it together. So anyway, have fun. Alright, so I got those two spacers installed there. That's where they go. And I did it while the pump was on there. I just loosened up the other bolts and reached around from the top and set them in there. So that was a surprise, but I got it done. There's always something to learn, right?